There can be only one podcast, and maybe the Prince of the Universe. Hi, folks. I'm Matt. It's just me today because I had a solo one I want to do. This may be even a two-parter. I actually have a lot to talk about. We are going to have Wes back soon and a special guest. Actually, Bruce is even mad because he said that he is not getting my invites, which may have been true on the last one. I'll admit that one. I won't admit the other ones. But now he's finally caught up with a bunch of Marvel shows and he wants to talk to me, so that's fine. We're glad to have Bruce back when he's not working 80 hours a week or more, probably. But I want to talk about this one. I was doing some reminiscing with an old friend of mine who worked at DiercTV, and we were talking about the good times, and I said, this would make a great podcast. Why don't you do a podcast with me? And he was like, nope. But, of course, supplied me with fun stories that I was involved in. Some I'd remembered. Some I'd forgotten, all hilarious. And I was thinking about doing this on Saturday Morning Sound Flange, where I wanted to give top 5 moments of all my jobs. When it came to DiercTV, holy cow, do I have some stories. Holy cow, I can't think of my top 5. In fact, there'd be 20 extra honorable mentions. I mean, of course, I worked there for 5 years, just about. I believe I came in at 2005 and left at 2000. Oh, no, it's 4 years. Excuse me, I guess it was 4 years, 2005, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 2008. So 4 years I was there. And had a blasty blast with that. My longest I'd ever been at a spot before then was, I believe, AmSouth Bank. I was there for 5 years. And of course, my current job, I'm working, I just finished 15, halfway through halfway into my 16th year, or coming up on my 16th year with them. So that's been nice. But it's funny because if DiercTV, the call center that was located here, was still around, I'd probably still be there. I had so much fun. So much fun. It was a different time, it was a different era, but I had fun. It was the world where MySpace was the thing. Facebook was like more of a college campus thing. It wasn't big. MySpace was the big thing. iPods and stuff like that were in. Different world. So much fun. I remember... one thing I would do a lot is I would go around and tell people I just quit the bank. I was done with it, and I grew up my hair, and because they were getting on to me about cutting my hair because it was getting a little fuzzy. Now the thing is, I work all the time, and on Saturday I don't want to go get my hair cut. In the evenings, no one's open. So on Saturday I have to go get my hair cut. That seems like a waste of my time. Saturday I want to have fun, but yes, I do need to get haircuts more often, more frequently. And so if I'm on vacation, I'll go get one. But it does tend to grow a little bit longer than it should. So I knew I was quitting soon. I just didn't know when, so I was growing it out a little bit longer. And then when I left, I was like, screw it, I'm just going to keep it long. This is one of 2 times I've ever grown out my hair. The second time was during COVID when I refused to cut. I needed a haircut, but we went to COVID. Barbershops were closed for like 6 weeks. And no one was cutting hair, and I was like, well, screw it. I won't get my hair cut until we can go back to work, which happened to be 2 years later. So my hair grew out long again. And that will probably be the last time. I will not grow it out again. I have no desire to. I don't really particularly like it. It was more of a stubborn thing. And the first time I just wanted to see what my hair would look long. And so 2005, I think a few people, if they've seen a long time fan of the YouTube channel, you've probably seen some videos of me in 2005 with my hair a little bit longer. It looks like I'm wearing makeup because I am. It was for a college. It was some college girl doing a photography shoot, and I had to wear makeup for it. I was not happy about that, but did. And it was the night of episode 3. And the shoot went a little long, and I wanted to get there super early, so I just left. And I still had the makeup on when I got there, and I was thinking, what, dude, are you wearing eyeshadow or something? I was like, is this evil? Is this dark matte? They thought I was theming it. Like Anakin was evil, so I'm evil now. And my hair was with a straightener, so it was really straight. I looked really different, probably a little too freaky there, but I just did not want to miss the show. Episode 3, of course. And anyway, so My first experience with DiercTV, I actually pretended I would go in and pretend. This is back before the internet was a big deal. You didn't go online and fill out an application. You went in there and filled out a resume. An application, attached your paper resume to it, and then they would call you. The job position may be listed online, but you couldn't apply online. You had to apply inside. So it was still in those days, 2005. We weren't technically there yet. Specifically what's that called? Anyway, I can't remember. It's super late here. I'm tripling over my words. But anyway, I walked in, and she was one of the two that called me out. Like, she knew I was lying. And most people would be so apologetic because I had them on. They'd start backpedaling, and they'd feel so sorry. They'd give me the interview, and then I figured maybe they'd like me, because I was very gracious to forgive them for getting me. In fact, I did get some job offers because of that, but ended up turning it down because after hearing about the job, did not want that job. And this one, I walked in, and she cussed me out, knew I was a liar because she never does interviews on Wednesday. And it was a Wednesday when I'd come in. She said, that is BS. You're BS, and you're so full of S. And just started cussing me up a storm. She said, I know for a fact. She's like, mother effer, I do not. Just cussing. I was like, oh my gosh, she is irate. There's another one who was irate but didn't cuss. She was cussing at me and everything, saying, you're such a liar. I said, well, maybe it was Thursday. I said, is it Thursday you do it? I said, okay, well, I missed the date. I said, I don't know what today's date is. What is it? And she told me it's like whatever, it's like, it's 5/12. I said, oh, okay. I thought it was 5/13. I thought 5/13 was the day. I said, okay, I just got wrong on the date. I'm sorry. And she went, you're a liar. And I said, well, here. I said, you have my resume, right? She went, no. I said, you lost my resume. And she just keeps getting on to me. I was like, look, I'll give you another one. I stuck to my guns. And so I walked away thinking, well, that's done. She ain't calling. And she did. She called later on that day. No, she called the next day and asked me to come on in that day if I could. And I said, she saw it and wants to talk to me. So I came on in, and we talked for a little while. And they were going to pay me to talk on the phone, selling DiercTV, which that's easy because DiercTV at the time, I could buy into that. Now, they didn't offer our local channels, so I wasn't going to get it because I love Survivor. You had to get like rabbit ears for that. And I was like, nope. But other than that, I was a true believer in DiercTV because I won't sell something that I don't believe in. But I believed it. She bought me. I bought into it to what she was pitching. I was like, you know what? I'm good. Let's roll. And this is one moment because there was some commotion going on outside. No, everyone was complaining because they had to work over their lunch breaks because the calls were so busy. And she came out there and just cussed the entire floor out. Told them sit their asses back in. I was blah blah blah, cussing. She sat back in. She went, I'm sorry you had to hear that. I went, no. I said, you know what? Just now and yesterday, I felt I got the real you. Like, you don't hide who you are. Like, you're going to cuss if people don't do their job. You're going to get mad. I said, and I don't mind that. In fact, it's refreshing to not see someone fake it out. She went, okay, well, speaking about faking, and of course, cussed me out a little bit more. She went, you need to drop the truth with me. You didn't have an interview, did you? You just came on in, she said she just came on in with your big old balls and sat down on my couch. I did not, I'm not used to hearing a woman say that. I was like, okay. And she went, yeah, is that what it was? Or I don't think she said something else was big, not the balls, I think. She said, just flopping an A, she said, and just coming in and asking for a job, but you were BSing me the whole time, weren't you? I went, yes, I was. And she went, see? I was like, okay, so we're perfect. And I had a love-hate relationship with Ashley, was her name. Loved her at times, but she was a huge pain in the ass. And we butted heads several times. But if I saw her again, we'd probably laugh. Not the worst boss, I guess you could say, I've ever had. But definitely not the best. All right, so I have so many of these that I wrote down just talking to him. I don't know where to start here. So, we used to have sweet little girl. I know she doesn't listen to this. I know she used to watch the channel, but I don't think she listens anymore to the podcast. But her name was Sarah, and little Sarah, I love to death. We were friends. She married someone on our second shift. I was so happy. And for a very short time before they moved away, she and her husband would come over to my house. I was newlywed myself, I think, and it was the old days of my board game group, and every once in a while she would come over. with her husband, and we would kind of chat and hang out. But it was so funny because she had a drinking problem, a bad one, and she got help. Not from me. I told her she should get help, but I mean, this woman showed up to work drunk and passed out at her desk. Now she was like the secretary or assistant secretary to the big boss. Or no, she wasn't even that. She was the woman who ran reports or whatever and helped people with certain requests. So she wasn't a saleswoman, and I don't think she would have been a good one. But boy, howdy. I mean, like they say, hey, Matt, they tell me she's passed out drunk again. I was like, ugh. So I'd have to get her up, wake her up, take her home. I drove her home so many times. And I get on to her, and I'm sorry. But she'd party all night at some club or whatnot and keep drinking until she came in and just reeked of it. So was kind of in shambles, but thankfully I heard that when she met this guy on second shift, they hit it off. He curbed her drinking, and she was fine afterwards. But kind of funny that no one thought to fire her. And it was kind of common knowledge that every once in a while, it wasn't every day, but once a week, guaranteed she's going to be passed out drunk at her desk. And no one says anything. Kind of weird. Let's see. I'm trying to get these in order of when they happen, but there's no way, as I'm saying this, I'm not going to do any of this. Let me see. I don't remember. Oh, yeah, okay. So I'm looking through these in order because I moved up. Well, I'll tell this one. I was on the floor. I was a salesman for 3 months. In the first month, I had made the top 10 salesman. I was number 10, but I'd made the top 10 salesman, and I had to stay for 4th of July. I was like, wait, what? I said, I'm brand new here. But because I was in the top 10 of sales, they let me stay. And then after that, I started giving I gave the guy who'd been number 1 for years. I was starting to beat him, and he beat me just barely, like by 1 or 2 sales. Later on, he admitted, because we became good friends afterwards, but later on he admitted that he was buying sales from other people just to obtain his number 1. He said, you were a beast. He said, I could not be. He said, I bought sales. I was that serious about my title. He said, I couldn't have it. And to be honest, everyone kept going, the new kid is going to knock you off, you know. And he came roaring back in sales, but I just kept making more sales too. And eventually he did win by 1, but he shook my hand and said, good job, nice job, but it's hard to beat the best. And I was like, who is this jerk? But then later on, like I said, we were friends. But in 3 months, I became, the guy who trained me, I became his boss. Because in 3 months, they asked me if I wanted to be a manager. And I said, I guess. And they said, do you have any questions? I said, no. And then I walked away and then walked back and went, wait, does that mean I have to cut my hair? And they said, no. Well, then that weekend, I went to go see my friends in Branson, Missouri. I thought that was the dumbest question I could have asked. Did I have to cut my hair? So I decided to cut my hair and dress up. Because we had these beige, you had to wear khakis and you could wear a beige polo or a suit and a tie. You had to dress up back in the day. So I'd wear the khakis and the beige. It was beige on beige, which was awful. But they had these nasty little, you could do dark dress pants too. But they had a beige, ugly DiercTV shirt. But I'd bought 2 of those, washed them, switched them out all week long because I just wanted to wear a polo and wear my same, I wore baggy beige. But it was just one whole, I just looked awful. I didn't care. I wore the beige DiercTV hat because that was the only hat you were allowed to wear. And I wanted a hat to kind of pull back my hair a little bit. And I just looked like trash. I looked like trash, but I could sell, which is what they liked about me. So when I came in, I was dressed to the nines, had my hair cut. They put me in a group of new hires because they had no idea who I was. No idea who I was. And that was a funny time. In fact, the old vice president, I see him every once in a while, he tells me that when his wife was Ashley at the time, he tells me that when that happened, when his wife said, hey, I promoted Matt, and she was like, why would you do that? He is awful. He is awful. You should, he looks like garbage. He's not management material. But then he looked at me because when I walked out of the new hire, I said, guys, this is my new hire. Is this my team? Why'd you put me in here? And they're like, whoa, it's Matt, so except they call me by my first name back then. So anyone today who says, Steven, do you remember me? Yes, I do, from DiercTV, because that's the only people who would call me Steven. But anyway, I was embarrassed because I came in and they put this guy, the guy that trained me, they put him on my team. And I saw that because they redivvied out the teams because we were growing so much. And his name was Jason, I remember. And I went to him. I said, hey, come here for a minute. I said, you heard I made management. And now he'd been there for a while. And he was number 3. And he's a pretty top salesman. He was number 3. And he said, yeah, I did. He said, congratulations. I went, are you going to be upset if you're on my team? I said, because I can transfer you. And I definitely understand that. And I'm sorry this happened. But they made me. He's like, no, man. He said, I'm happy they made you the offer. I'm happy that I trained you. He knew I liked Star Wars back then. He said, I'm Obi-Wan and you're Anakin. He said, I couldn't be prouder. He said, so yeah, I'll gladly be on your team. So I was like, all right. And eventually he had left to get a better job, hated the job. And I went to his house, I remember, and asked him to come back on the team. He went, you know what? I wasn't going to come back because I was just kind of like, I'm done, I don't want to be talked around by some new kids or whatever. He went, but you asked me back, I will come back. And he did. He did well for a short time. That was all about the sales, man. All about the sales. Oh, geez. I'm thinking about more stories after this. I did break state law getting more sales. When I found out my sales were tied to my team, because I started losing my commission checks were worth way more than my regular checks. It was like I was living at Cards, Coins, and Collectibles, which Wes and I have told you, our commission checks far exceeded, after a while, our regular paychecks, just because we were just slinging sales. I love sales, but the thing is, though, I can't do it today because the pressure of sales. If you have a bad month, oh well, I'm eating ramen noodles this month, but I can't do that when I'm responsible for a family and kids and everything. So can't do it, but I do. If I can believe in the project, man, I still believe I can sell them like hotcakes. But I also wanted my team to believe in sales, and they weren't. They were kind of lazy, and people had made threats, but no one had ever been fired before. And I remember I made a goal that they all had to get to 13% in sales. 13%. Now, if you were in your 20s, if you were in the 20s, you were excellent. So, that's kind of the goal, though. But if you were below 15, you were basically garbage. And at that 13, I found out you're making just minimum wage. You're not even getting a paycheck. So I said, everyone has to be at 13 or they'll be fired. And I was serious about that. In fact, one of my coats still carries the little, we called ourselves pirates. I made a pirate map and had everyone's name on a ship. I still have those ship cutouts today. And one of the last coats I wore on the call center went back in the day when I was a manager. I just never took them out. And through the years, I've just kept them there just as a reminder of that motivation. They all got into the pirate theme. We all gave ourselves pirate names, and I moved their ship as they got closer to that 13% or beyond. Because I had a beyond, I had treasure at 13, and then open sea like beyond, and and everyone was past the treasure and on to open sea except for one guy. He was at 12.99, and he thought that was good enough. Yes, I fired him for 0.01%. I fired, and they were shocked. He was shocked. I heard later on he forgave me. He was really mad at me for years about that. But I heard later on someone talked to him, and he goes, "Nah, man, I was a jerk back then. I deserved it." So I'm glad. I wish I know his name, and if I ever met him again, I'd love to talk to him again. But I know he was pissed because he did not believe I was going to fire him. But I did. And then that kind of ship-shaped, and our team became number 1 in sales for 10 out of 12 months. We were just rolling in it until I moved up to HR. But anyway, that's another story. Back when I was the boss back then, we had a lot of crazy stuff happen. Sean was my quote-unquote arch rival on the sales floor. We became buddies, but he was a little bit of a jerk at times. But I do love him. I love him today. I hung out with him, it's been before the pandemic. I haven't seen him since then. But he's a nice guy. I'd love to see him again and see how he's doing. He and I basically became managers at the same time, I believe, because they just needed double the teams. So they went to number 1, 2, and 3 in the sales thing. And I heard one guy, they went to number 4 and 5 salesman too later on because I don't remember. Maybe it was the number 4 guy. Either way, one of them said, "Screw you," and kept his job. Like he didn't want to go because he knew he's going to lose his big commission check, which is true. For years, I made less money as a manager than I did as sales. Sales, I was killing it. But either way, Sean would do wild stuff to the employees. One of them was if you got arrested for drunk driving or something like that, petty theft or whatnot, you got your name in the paper or your picture was on the website, he would print out that picture and put it on everyone's desk just to kind of mock that person who got arrested for DWI and thereby pissing tons of people off. And I hated that he did that. And one weekend, he got arrested for DUI. And I got with the tech people because we had thumbprint sign-in. You had to sign in with your thumbprint back then. And I said, hey, and your picture would pop up. And I said, hey, can you get it to where his arrested photo shows up? They said, yeah, absolutely. And I didn't want to paste it all over the place like he did, but I thought that'd be funny. Sure enough, when he scanned his thumb, his mugshot came up, and he was pissed. Actually, one of the people in the tech support got in trouble for that. I think they got suspended or something for a few days. And I called him. I remember his name, Corey. I said, Corey, you need to rat me out. You need to tell him it was me. All right? I don't want you taking the fall for this. I'll deal with Sean's anger. He'll get over it. Trust me. Because at that point, we were becoming friends, But, I think he would have gotten mad at me and gotten over it. But definitely wouldn't have gone to the head honchos about, suspending someone. And he goes, no, man, I hate that dude. I did it proudly. I'm with you, man. I'm standing with you. So it was kind of funny. I had, and actually the whole tech team, I had them on my side. They were good friends. But another guy, I remember there's this one guy that we had hired. We were doing a lot of hiring back then, and he wanted to hire the weird and strange. We hired this nice guy. He seemed to be nice. And that night I went to the haunted mansion experience in our local area. And I saw this guy with fangs, crazy eyes, red hair, spiked up flaming hair or whatnot, and makeup. And, he looks like some kind of demon that crawled out of hell. And he's crawling. And he's making this wild noise, like, la, 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 la. It's like some clicking and gnashing. He's creeping people out. People are waiting in line. And he's like coming close to them and, doing his little death rattle or whatnot and scaring people. And he's coming up to me and I'm smiling. Well, then he stops, backs up, breaks character, and then smiles. Now remember, he's got a mouthful of fake teeth, fake fangs. And he smiles like, Mr. Wilkins, hey, how's it going? Now I'm freaked out. I didn't know who this guy was. How he knew my name, I had no idea. And I went, hi, do you know, he said, you know who I am? I said, no. He said, we spoke this afternoon. I went, I still was just a blank until he finally told me. He said, you just gave me a job at DiercTV. And I was like, oh. He said, well, I can't wait till Monday. See you then. And then he got back into character and started scaring people again. The weirdest thing ever. Let's see. What else? I hired the first girl. I remember. For some reason, Ashley, our boss, was a girl. She thought girls sold terror. The girls were not salesmen, she said. But yet she was a girl. And the real reason was she wanted to be the only hen in the rooster nest, right? She wanted to be all the guys ogling her. She didn't want no competition in there. That's the real reason. But when she left, it was like, Jackie Robinson, man. I was hiring a girl. That's what I was going to do. I was going to be the first one to break code. No one wanted to do it, but I was the first one that broke through that ceiling there proudly and I did it because this girl came in. Women would come in and interview all the time, but we never hired them, which obviously is illegal, yes. But that was per our boss, who was a woman. She wouldn't let us hire them. Well, the first girl I decided was worth it was a girl who we would give we'd say, hey, here's what the job is. It's a sales job. If you sell well, you'll make tons of money. If you don't, you'll be fired within a month. If that's not the job for you, get up, walk out. And we were literally like that because we were like there were so many interviews. We did group interviews, and they'd walk out, and seriously, I had no hard feelings. Like, bye, thank you for coming. No, don't be sorry at all. Go, I'm fine. It's not for you. Well, then we started doing it. This one girl stayed, and then I said, why did you come in for the job? She went, well, I thought this was a secretary job. I went, what? Why did you why did you, I was like, why did you stay then? Because it's not a secretary job. She went, well, I heard it was a sales job and you made it sound so good. I want to do that now. She had no sales experience. And my buddy was like, no. And this is actually the story, one of the stories we were talking about the other day. He said, he remembers saying, no way, man, you're going to hire this girl? I was like, I like her tenacity. I like her spirit. I can help this. I can shape this. I can mold this. And she ended up being my number one saleswoman. And then breaking out for other women to get hired. In fact, the next two women I hired, I remember their names too, Red and Cream. And I didn't know they were roommates. And I called one, gave one the job. Then a few calls later, called the other one. They're like, oh, good, because I was like, wait, this is the same number. I said, y'all live together? And said, yeah, this is back when landlines were a thing. I was like, oh, okay. I said, well, look, girls, I love you, can't wait, but you cannot go by Red and Cream. You have to go by your real names. They went, that is our real names. I went, I'll see you Monday with your driver's license. And sure enough, Redd. Her name was Red with 2 D's, and her name was Cream with a K. It was on their driver's license. Blown away by that. But they were also my best saleswomen. Actually, the big fight broke out between Red and my assistant manager, and I had to suspend them both. We did suspensions a lot, and neither one of them hated me. In fact, they both apologized to me afterwards when they came back to work. And that was it's a good thing I had a lot of respect for people, because I did suspend people, even if they were my friends. I'd get on to him. I'd say, look, he's like, buddy, because I stayed out late with one guy and at his house at a party, showed up early the next morning. He showed up late, so I wrote him up. And no one thought I'd write him up because they knew that we had gone out, together or partied at his house that night. And he was like, dude, why'd you write me up? I said, because if I don't, I lose the respect of all 13 other employees. I said, and to be honest, I'm actually pissed at you. He went, what? I said, we're friends. You should respect me more than anyone else here. And not showing up on time, that was so disrespectful. And we stayed friends. I mean, he was like, you know what? You're right. Sorry about that. So thankfully, I kept all their respect and everything. I don't know how, because, again, I never gave them breaks. I'll tell you that. That's against state law. I never took breaks, because break time meant you're losing at least 2 sales, maybe 3, depending on how fast you can close them out. So why lose 2 sales? I'd rather stay and get paid than go on break and do nothing. So what I did, I said, if you guys are always high on sales, I'll pay for your snacks. I'd go to Sam's, buy tons of snack packs and Cokes, and I'd push around a tray with an ice tray. I mean, I'd fill their cup with ice too, and ask what they wanted to drink and what they wanted to snack on, and free snacks for my entire team. But the reason was I wanted them to stay in their chair and make 2 more sales, 1 or 2 more sales. I mean, I was really it was insane back then. But it's funny because no one realized what I was doing. And then later, when I ran into these people and they'd say, you were the best manager, I said, no, I wasn't. And I'll tell them why. And they'll say, oh, that's right, we never went on break. I said, you never did. They got their lunch break, but they never took afternoon or morning breaks, because I said, no, I wanted you on the floor. That's why I gave you free snacks. It's worth it. It's worth it. I'll pay a couple bucks for everyone to get, so X amount of sales. That's tons of sales for me. So, yeah, I mean, ruthless is what I was. I had one guy who was sitting there. He'd eat a whole bottle of Tums. What, did he have heartburn? I asked him. No, because they taste good, he said. I'd listened to one guy. He came to work. His name was Aaron, I remember. He came to work with a backpack. And I kind of joked him. I said, what do you carry a backpack for? He said, well, water, weapons. I said, weapons? He brought out a hatchet and a knife. I said, what? You can't bring weapons. He said, dude, the neighborhoods I walk through to get here, they're dangerous. He said, but when they see a man carrying a hatchet, they leave me alone. So he would hold the hatchet through the bad neighborhood and look real mean. Yeah, I guess that's a good point. If you're going to go through the bad part of town, look real mean and carry a hatchet, and people will leave you alone. That's what I learned from him. Also, he would constantly flirt with our customers, which was against the rules. I got on to him about that. But if they were in the vicinity, he was looking. And it's over the phone. Anyone can have a beautiful voice and not look good. But he'd say, hey, you need to email me. Back then, it wasn't Facebook. It was MySpace or email me. And she said, sure, what's your email address? He said, hopefully this is not a real address anymore, but electricpornojesus@yahoo.com. I remember exactly what it was because I was listening to his call at the time. I shot up from my desk. I shot daggers in his eyes, and he looked at me and he gave me the thumbs up. He had no clue that there was anything wrong with that. So, wow. Wonderful stuff. Hey, you know what? That's all the time I have for now, but I'll come back with more stories on Princes of the Universe.